morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on this lovely bike to work day. I'm trusting that a number of you did not bike to work because you're looking fairly dry. We are here today to announce the formation of a group, an alliance for reliable, competitive, high-speed internet. As many of you know, the city of Syracuse does not have Verizon Fios service. And as a consequence, those of us who understand the importance that Fios and high-speed internet has for the economy and for our residents are forming together to talk about the importance for our future, our economy, and the service that we can give to the people who live here. There has been a lot of discussion about what has come to be known as the digital divide and how that has continued to separate people in our community. For far too long, we have tolerated having some people in our community have access to high-speed internet and all the service that goes along with it, while others do not. That has been a disincentive to our economy, a disincentive to economic development, and clearly a disincentive to residents in the city of Syracuse. So we have come together to form a coalition to start talking more about this and to start bringing awareness around these issues. But in order to have a real full discussion about it and to have the kind of access that we need, we of course need to have many partners. And I am joined today by a number of elected officials who are here to show their partnership. And let me just introduce a couple of them. You will be hearing from our own Congressman Dan Maffei relatively soon. But we are also joined by County Legislator Linda Urban, and from Senator Dave Valesky's office, Scott Butler. Assemblyman Roberts will be joining us shortly as well. Joining us in this coalition, and in fact leading the charge, we need to have a strong federal partner, because most of the regulations governing telecommunications indeed emanate from Washington, D.C. So in order to have a fruitful discussion, and in fact in order to solve these problems, we need to have someone in Washington who is advocating for these interests. And I am pleased to say, as he does on so many issues, we have that voice and that advocate in Congressman Dan Maffei. So let me introduce Congressman Maffei.
Well, thank you, Mayor Stephanie A, not just for today's announcement, but for your leadership on so many different things and in challenging times for any northeastern city. And you continue to do an exemplary job, and it's an honor to represent the city of Syracuse, my hometown. We knew that the digital divide was a problem, particularly in our rural areas, and I have many rural areas in my district. And fairly recently, we did a roundtable discussion of how to better get high-speed internet access, not just to schools, but to schools, businesses, and homes in places like Wayne County and rural Oswego and Cayuga counties, and rural Onondaga County. What I didn't quite realize was how the digital divide affects us even in the cities, and particularly here in the city of Syracuse. And one of the ways I found out was I moved from DeWitt back into the city of Syracuse, and lo and behold, only had one choice for cable, internet, etc. Suddenly there wasn't competition anymore. And without competition, the consumer really has no way of having any leverage or power. Competition is absolutely necessary to make sure the consumers get the services they need. And I'm not saying that any particular company is bad or doesn't try or whatever, but you're always going to have more of an incentive if there is fair competition. And that's so vitally important. The city is also very important. The city is where it's the core of our economy. And the more kinds of infrastructure we have, we talk about roads, we talk about Route 81, talk about our water infrastructure, but this is a key part, our communications infrastructure. It directly creates jobs because you have more communicating back and forth, in addition to the jobs it would create in the communications industry itself. And the fact that right now Syracuse is left out is a big, big problem, and it's something that we have to address. This commission is the first step on that. We will make sure that we collaborate where we can. We're not interested necessarily in being adversary of any company or any group, but we will advocate, and we will strongly advocate for the consumers and for the businesses and citizens of Central New York, and in particular Syracuse. One example of how we could be doing better in terms of business in the city, but a business owner who ended up not having that choice is Bob Slavinsky. He's the owner of Encompass Technologies in Geddes, and I'm going to introduce him to talk to you about his story.
Good morning. Donna warned me about speaking in front of just cameras, so if you guys could put your cameras down, put on your Google Glass, make it a little bit more comfortable. Okay, my name is Bob Slavinsky. I am the owner of Encompass Technologies and Syracuse Innovations Group. I've been doing information technology work in Syracuse for about 25 years now, as my grandkids say, and that's about as old as their grandpa. About 2 years ago, we were located on Malloy Road up in East Syracuse. And we decided I wanted to move closer to the city where there's more potential customer base, and also closer to my home, which is out in the Camillus area. When we started looking, I was like, hey, let's go downtown. But when we looked at all the facilities downtown, we didn't have fiber in any of the buildings. And part of my business model is to have very good upload speeds, not just the download speeds, but the upload speeds. And all of the providers were inadequate to provide what we needed as a business, so we ended up locating out in Geddes. So I got brought here to speak about the digital divide by a friend. And at first when I talked to him, he said, Bob, you got to look into the digital divide in Syracuse. I said, no, come on, that's a third world country problem. And when I really started looking at it, I realized that there is a real problem here, and that a lot of the ISPs these days are cherry picking their areas, they're cherry picking their customers, they're not upgrading their infrastructure. And these are companies that are using our infrastructure, telephone poles, right-of-ways, to provide services to us. And it's inherent that we put good policies in place to require these companies to provide really good internet access in all of the areas, urban, rural, and everything like that. So I'm happy to be supporting the Arch Coalition, and I'm happy to thank my mayor and the congressman for letting me speak. Thank you.
We'd be happy to entertain any on-topic questions, if anybody from the media has any. All right, hearing none.
Hey,
Oh, Tim, you're so close to escaping.
I'd be interested to hear some more specifics about what we lack, because we do have a cable franchise, so we do have broadband. There's no price competition, maybe that's one of the issues. But Bob, if you could talk a little more about the business impacts of what you found downtown versus wherever you are in Geddes.
Well, you know, I don't want to get specific with companies, but the cable infrastructure in at least the Syracuse area, if not the country, is an antiquated system. You know, we started networks with coax cable, and they're reaching a point where their speed limits are getting to a point that it's not cost effective for them to upgrade their infrastructure to meet the speeds of the fiber companies that are now offering close to gigabit downloads.
But there's tons of fiber into the State Tower building right over here, so there must be some fiber around here.
Sure. There's private companies out there that will bring fiber in. And that's one of the things we looked at is, hey, can I go to, I'm forgetting the name of the company now, have them, I think it was Choice One at the time, or One Communications. Can you bring fiber into our premise? But it was really cost effective. The amount they wanted for contracts and the amount they wanted per month was just something I couldn't afford.
Okay. So where you moved to, what did you find in Geddes?
Well, Geddes, they had Verizon Fios on the premise, so that gave me the upload and download speeds I needed. So, and the pricing was competitive with Time Warner and the other providers.
Okay. Where are you in Geddes?
I'm right in Westvale Professional Building,
Okay.
across the street from Westvale.
Let me just say too, Tim, that there are other places in the country where city governments, municipal governments have invested in upgrading so that they can have fiber and high-speed fiber. I believe it's Chattanooga, Tennessee, which did that so that they could recruit businesses to their metropolitan area to expand, knowing that this is the next, if not the current frontier of how economic development is going to happen, and they have been widely successful in doing that. I've also been told that Syracuse University was trying to recruit some economic development business entities, and one of the things that stopped the discussion was our lack of having the kind of technology and high-speed internet that other places have.
Would you look at a municipal solution?
Not until I can make sure that the current municipal utilities that we have are being maintained and expanded in the way that they need. But this is something that is in Tennessee, again, as I'm doing this from my recollection, this was a partnership between both the municipality and the state.
You indeed could have a local public-private partnership, but the reason why I'm here is because clearly part of the issue is the federal level. This is not just a problem that affects Syracuse. It affects many, many northeastern states. Boston, I think Boston is left out of the Verizon Fios network. And so what you need to have is a federal policy that encourages more competition. And that competition, I think, will yield much better results. And there will be companies that say, okay, well, we can do this. But what Bob said is absolutely true. What you have here is some of the infrastructure is really public infrastructure, and some of it is built by those companies. So it is a somewhat complex issue to sort of figure out, okay, what do the companies invest themselves, and they certainly deserve to make a reasonable return, but what do they owe all of society because they're using public resources? It is that combination that makes all of these decisions so complex. But we can do a better job, and certainly we need to do a better job for the people of central New York, because Syracuse is the major economic center, and it needs to be wired.
So is this more of an economic development thing, or more of a, there's people that can't get, can't afford
It's
it?
both. It's both.
Which is, I guess, your priority?
No, I always look at true economic development is allowing all of the constituents, in my case in the city, in Linda's case in the county, and in Dan's case in his congressional district, all the constituents to get the tools that they need to develop themselves. So shorthand economic development, good schools are economic development. Good tools, good water mains are economic development. So this is good development for all of our constituents, whether it's Bob for economic development or whether it's our schools for making sure that they are on the cutting edge so that they can educate our children as well.
How much, if at all, does the whole Comcast Time Warner merger figure into this and the whole competition aspect of things?
I mean, it's certainly something that needs to be considered with that merger. Obviously, with any merger of that size, it's going to be very complex, and I know Congress is currently taking a look at it, as is the administration, to sort of weigh all the positives and negatives. But certainly, one of the big factors is competition, and if it looks like that merger is going to significantly reduce competition anywhere, then it's something that we definitely have to look at. Their argument, of course, is that Comcast and Time Warner are already in predominantly separate markets, so it wouldn't increase or decrease competition according to them. But one can make it an argument, certainly it's been made, that what about the future, and they might be competing in the future if they don't merge. So those are things that are currently being considered in that merger.
So the net neutrality discussions in Washington, yes, did it have
I mean, it does in the longer run, because it governs how companies will be able to price their various products, and of course how all consumers in the United States will see the internet. But it doesn't really pertain to this particular issue of how to advocate for the city of Syracuse getting better broadband competition.
So where does the coalition go from here?
Yeah, there's going to be meetings, more discussions, more invitation for people to join, and there's going to be more advocacy. So you're going to hear a lot more from this coalition of bringing out the facts so that we have people who understand the important implications for these kind of decisions and access to these kind of tools for our entire constituencies. So
What, in a sentence, what's the mission of this coalition?
the mission of the coalition is to advocate to bring, you use my layman's terms, high-speed internet tools to all of New York State, particularly Syracuse as the first.
I love that. So you want to
To the extent you have more questions, we can break up, and you can ask me or the congressman or Linda or Bob. But I want to thank you all for being here very much, and have a good week.